Hello again to another Agricolor reaction. Today we will be watching Ottoman Conquest of Thessalonica and Albania, medieval history from kings and generals, another video from Ottoman history and battles playlist, and last week we watched about Constantinople being sieged by, well, that didn't work out well. So let's just jump into it and see what's going on in the next part, and how did it happen, and did that actually went in the right way or wrong way, or let's just watch.
The year is 1439. In the Tuscan capital of Florence, hundreds of Catholic and Orthodox clergymen met in a grand council to finally mend the great schism that had divided their two churches back in 1054. The day's meeting was subject to much passion and feverish debate regarding church doctrine, the sounds of grunts and shouting filling the hall. The Emperor of the Romans, John VIII Palaiologos, sat on an elevated throne overlooking the procession, trying not to look desperate and panicked. He knew that the result of this council could mean life or death for Constantinople and Roman civilization as a whole. The Ottomans would come knocking at his gates sooner rather than later, and when they did, support from the West would be crucial if his feeble empire was to survive. When your empire is gradually disappearing, early prevention is the key, and much easier than getting it back later. And by empire, I mean your hair. Most men suffer from hair loss, but these days you can do something about it. Try our sponsor for this video, Keeps. By the age of 35, 2 in 3 men have lost hair to male pattern baldness. Sometimes a little, sometimes all of it. Prevention is key, so if you or someone you know is concerned about long-term hair loss, you should start hair loss treatment as soon as possible. With Keeps, this is easy. You can get an online consultation to set up a treatment plan with the help of a hair loss professional, tailored to your needs and circumstances. Then they will send you all the stuff you need to carry on your treatment program. It's simple, discreet, and you don't have to go to a doctor or pharmacist. For preventing loss, stimulating growth, or improving the health of your hair, Keeps is a convenient way to take action. There are no guarantees in this field, but you don't know until you try. And with over 1 million men treated and over 5,000 5-star reviews, if your situation can be improved, Keeps is how you'll achieve it. Thanks to Keeps for sponsoring this video. Hair loss stops with Keeps. For a special offer to get started, go to keeps.com/kingsandgenerals or click the link in the description. That's keeps.com/kingsandgenerals. In only the first 3 years of his reign, Sultan Murad II had already conducted significant military operations against the Byzantines, suppressed various rebelling Ottoman princes, and defeated a number of Turkic beys in Anatolia. Although the local forces of the Byzantine Emperor repelled the latest Ottoman siege on Constantinople,
it wasn't even 20?
Many other Byzantine settlements had fallen to the armies of Murad in quick succession. Thessaly and Nicomedia, in addition to their coastal hinterlands, were swiftly captured by the local Ottoman marcher lords, while down south, the Hexamilian Wall was breached by Ottoman raiders, resulting in the sacking of many Byzantine settlements in the Peloponnese. More worrying for the joint government of Manuel II and his son John VIII was the Ottoman siege on Thessalonica, the second largest city in the empire. During the Ottoman interregnum, Thessalonica had been given to the senior emperor's nephew and rival claimant John VII, and his minor son Andronikos V, but the pair had died in 1408 and 1407 respectively, thus bringing an end to Andronikos IV's side of the imperial dynasty. In the years after, Thessalonica was given to Manuel II's third eldest living son, Andronikos, who oversaw a lengthy period of relative peace and prosperity for the city. Nevertheless, with an Ottoman army now at his gates, and lacking the resources to mount a proper defense, the Byzantine despot decided to give control of the city to the Venetians, in the hopes they would repel the invaders. By the early fall of 1423, the transfer of power between the two states was completed, and a sizable Venetian garrison was installed in Thessalonica, thus officially ending over 1,500 years of on-and-off Roman rule in the city. In spite of the newly arrived military aid, tensions immediately rose between the local Orthodox inhabitants of the city and their new Catholic overlords, as the latter was accused by the former of curtailing their economic rights and the rights of the local Orthodox Church. As a result, the population of the once prosperous Thessalonica had fallen to 10,000 by the end of the decade, as many Byzantines fled en masse into Ottoman lands, deeming that life under the Venetians was akin to slavery. As the Ottoman grip around Thessalonica strengthened, John VIII embarked on a journey to the west, like his father and grandfather before him, in order to gain much-needed military and fiscal aid. Putting his teenage brother Constantine in charge of the imperial capital, the junior Byzantine emperor travelled to Venice, Milan and Hungary, but obtained nothing beyond a few empty pledges. Back in Constantinople, local Byzantine representatives signed a desperate peace treaty with Edessa in 1424, thus bringing the 3-year conflict with the Ottomans to an end. Much of the gains of the Treaty of Gallipoli, signed back in 1403, were erased, as John VIII's gamble to destabilize the Ottoman realm upon the death of Mehmed I had failed to bear fruit. Once again, Constantinople became a vassal state to Edessa, and was forced to pay a yearly tribute of 21,000 hyperpera to Murad II. The lands of the Byzantine realm were now reduced to a portion of the Morea, a number of the scattered islands in the Aegean, Constantinople and its hinterland, and a thin line of settlements dotted across the Thracian Black Sea coast up to Mesembria. The following year, the 75-year-old Manuel II died after a turbulent 34-year reign. He would be remembered as a dogged emperor who kept his dying empire alive against all odds, stemming the tide of more powerful rulers like Sultan Bayezid I, Emir Timur and King Sigismund. With peace between Edessa and Constantinople re-established for the time being, the tightening Ottoman siege on Thessalonica still persisted, as Murad refused to recognize the Venetian acquisition of the city. War engulfed the Aegean Sea once more, as Ottoman raiders plundered a number of Venetian colonies in the region, while the Doge's navies began blockading the Dardanelles Strait. In spite of declaring war on Edessa, Venetian resolve to defend Thessalonica was lacking in comparison to their colonies in the Aegean, as many in Venice saw the former Byzantine city as an expensive and fruitless venture. After 7 long years of besiegement, Ottoman forces, under the personal command of the Sultan, managed to scale the land walls of Thessalonica successfully, and descended into the city, plundering and slaughtering their way to the fleeing Venetians in the harbour. The 15th century Byzantine historian John Anagnostis, who was also an eyewitness to the sack of the city, blamed the Venetian garrison for the bloody event, as they prevented the local Romans of Thessalonica from peacefully transferring the city to Ottoman authorities as they did back in 1387. Almost 3 decades after falling out of Ottoman control, the banners of Islam were hoisted over the second city of the Byzantine realm once more.
Yeah, so far, interesting, although it's like they started in 1439, so it's still like more than a decade to go. Oh, no, they jumped into 1430, so it's kind of less, but still a few years to go. And I don't have much to add right now, because they're just kind of like stating the facts and in the chronological order. So yeah, obviously there would be some deaths, natural or not natural, but still after 34 years of ruling Constantinople, there was kind of like, well, he ruled for a long time. I think that's a really long time for back then, isn't it? Yeah, so okay, let's just, oh, that's a long one. So I'll be seeing you in a second. Bye. Okay, I'm back. The ad's finished. Someone was cooking. And then we can go back here and keep going. And there we go.
As Thessalonica fell to Murad, a number of Ottoman military operations were also launched, directed at Albania and Epirus. The Despotate of Epirus was one of the Byzantine successor states established in the aftermath of the sack of Constantinople during the Fourth Crusade, back in 1204. Ruled by a branch of the former Imperial Angelos dynasty, the Despotate achieved its military and economic height during the 1220s as the newly established Empire of Thessalonica. However, after its devastating and decisive defeat to Bulgaria at the Battle of Klokotnitsa in 1230, the state steadily contracted in land and influence over the next century. Nevertheless, the despotate chugged along during the 1300s under new Italian leadership, which saw it maintain its autonomy against a number of foes, mainly the Serbians and Byzantines. Fast forward to the 15th century, Epirus, under its new ruler, despot Carlo II Toko, became the subject of much attraction for Edirne. After his ascension to the Ottoman throne in 1429, the illegitimate cousins of the newly crowned Epirot ruler appealed to the court of Murad II for military aid in order to secure their self-proclaimed inheritance over the country. As a result, an Ottoman force struck deep into Epirus in 1430 and captured its capital Ioannina with little resistance. What resulted was a new peace being established between the various factions of the Toko dynasty, and Carlo II continues to rule from the town of Arta as an official Ottoman vassal. For the last century, the various lords and rulers of Albania had often played off their more powerful neighbours like the Venetians, Serbians and the Ottomans against one another in order to maintain their autonomy. However, since the reign of Mehmet I, Edirne's interest in taming the mountains of Albania became evident, as more and more military campaigns were launched into the region, culminating in the conquests of Flori and Kruja back in 1417. As a result of these conquests, Albanian lords began submitting to Ottoman vassalage in droves, and even began sending their sons and heirs to the Ottoman court as political hostages. Meanwhile, the Timar and Devshirme systems were introduced across the wider region, while the unpopular jizya tax on non-Muslims was instituted on Catholic and Orthodox Albanians alike. After languishing under unpopular Islamic rule for years, the war between the Venetians and the Ottomans gave many dissatisfied Albanian lords the opportunity to revolt against their Ottoman overlords, which they did in 1428, forging an alliance with the Doge of Venice. Many of these lords wished to retake their seized lands from the Timar-holding Ottoman provincials of the region, and so a bloody struggle began in earnest over the local region. In spite of early Albanian successes, after the fall of Thessalonica in 1430, Venice signed a separate peace treaty with Edirne, thus leaving the Albanian lords on their own in their struggle for independence. Between 1432 and 1436, Ottoman forces systematically defeated the disunited Albanian nobility one by one, and by the end of the military campaign, all of Albania was put under direct Ottoman rule. As Albania entered the Ottoman orbit, an opportunity to bring Serbia back into the fold also arose for Edirne. Under its ruler, Stefan Lazarevic, the Serbian despotate had drifted out of Ottoman vassalage during the aftermath of the Battle of Ankara in 1402, and had since then acted as a buffer state between the Ottomans and Hungary. However, with the sudden death of the childless Stefan in 1427, the reconciled noble and former rebel Juraj Brankovic became the new ruler of Serbia with Hungary's political backing. In return for helping him secure the Serbian throne, Juraj surrendered the great Danube fort city of Belgrade to Buda and became an official Hungarian vassal. Back in Edirne, Murad II responded to these ongoing political developments by claiming Serbia for himself on the grounds of his grandfather's marriage to Stefan's sister Olivera back in 1390. In 1428, an Ottoman army stormed into Juraj's territories and temporarily occupied the old capital of Kruševac, thus forcing Serbia to become an Ottoman vassal once more. As a result of the war, the strategic Danube fortress of Golubac was transferred to Ottoman forces, thus giving Edirne a staging ground to conduct future military operations in Hungary. Lastly, wanting to consolidate his power further in Serbia, Murad II also married a daughter of the Serbian despot in 1435, Mara Brankovic. Not just a wallflower, Mara would become a trusted advisor of the Sultan on political developments coming out of Europe for the next 2 decades.
Okay.
The 1420s also saw Edirne reassert its power over Wallachia against the political interferences of Buda. The principality had become a battleground for both states during the decade, which saw the pro-Ottoman ruler Radu II contest control over the country against his cousin, the pro-Hungarian Dan II. The Wallachian throne changed hands 7 times between the 2 members of the Basarab family, which finally culminated in Dan II succeeding in permanently gaining control over the country as a Hungarian vassal in 1427. However, this status quo was not to last long, as the Wallachian voivode would be killed in 1432 during an Ottoman invasion that saw Edirne once again install its own puppet ruler in the country, Alexander I Aldea. In spite of his installment, the pro-Ottoman voivode suddenly fell seriously ill in 1435 and died the following year, thus prompting his half-brother, the pro-Hungarian Vlad II Dracul, to seize the throne. Luckily for Edirne, Vlad's close relationship with Buda was to be fleeting, as in 1437, his main political backer, King Sigismund of Hungary, died at the age of 69 without a male heir to succeed him. With peasant revolts sweeping across Hungary and political turmoil engulfing Buda, the Wallachian voivode decided to reconcile with Murad II and accepted Ottoman vassalage. In order to show his loyalty to his new liege lord, Vlad II contributed his forces to a great Ottoman raiding party headed to Transylvania in 1438, which saw the sacking of many Hungarian towns, including Sebeș and Brașov. While Murad II had been focused on Ottoman military operations in the Balkans, developments from Anatolia would put Edirne into a panic, as a tremendous eastern threat once again loomed over the Sultanate. By the start of the 1430s, the Karamanid Beylik under Ibrahim II Bey had broken the general peace in Anatolia and retook the Ottoman border settlements of Akşehir and Beyşehir for his realm, in addition to launching a significant siege on Amasya. In spite of the sudden outbreak of hostilities, like with the previous Ottoman Karamanid wars of the past, Edirne's military response was a swift one, which saw it quickly retake the two border towns and lift the siege on Amasya with the help of the Dulkadirid Beylik. However, right as Murad's armies were going to launch a final full-scale invasion of the Karamanids, grave news from the east began trickling to the court of Murad II. Shahrukh, the youngest son of Timur and the leader of his father's former realm, had launched a major military campaign against the Karaköyünlü in eastern Anatolia and Azerbaijan. Not since the days after the Battle of Ankara had Timurid armies come so close to the Ottoman border, which put an already paranoid Edirne into a complete panic. The ruler of the Karaköyünlü, Kara Iskender, fled to Ottoman lands after being defeated by the Timurids, thus putting strains on Edirne's relations with Shahrukh. However, what followed between the Ottomans and the Timurids was to differ from their original confrontation at the start of the century. Unlike the letters of threats and war seen with Bayezid I, letters of peace and homage came out of Murad II's palace to the Timurid ruler. The Ottoman Sultan reminded the Timurid emir that he was still in his suzerainty, and that their realms had been at peace since the days of their late fathers. Unlike Timur, the more peace-oriented Shahrukh accepted these Ottoman peace offers and marched his armies away from the Ottoman border as a gesture of goodwill as negotiations for Kara Iskender began. Soon enough, the exiled ruler of the Karaköyünlü learned of the transpiring relations between Murad and Shahrukh and fled to Azerbaijan, where he would be assassinated in 1436. As a result of this latest diplomatic episode with the Timurids,
left because he was thinking he might be assassinated there, and there you go.
Murad
right under the knife,
invading the Karamanid Beylik and concluded a hasty peace treaty with Konya as a means not to upset his fragile peace with Shahrukh. Even though the Karamanids were off the table, the Ottoman Sultan did, however, take the time to re-establish rule amongst the petty Beyliks of Genik and annex the region in a show of power by the end of the decade.
I mean, he was really still that was it 36, so all that thing when it was happening, so he was less than 20, that was 20 to 24, so he's only in his 30s? Less than 30? I mean, like, smart guy, isn't it? Thinking ahead? Alright. So far, so good. Although I'm kind of surprised about that assassination of that one guy. That came out from nowhere, for me. And I'm getting really cold in here, so I'm gonna pause this ad and I'm gonna get myself tea, and I'm gonna see you in a second. Bye. Oh yeah, I'm back, and I have a cup of tea. It's kind of hot, so I can't even drink it now. But I'm warm, so it's warming me up, so let's just go back. And let's go back here as well, so you can see too. Alright.
For the better part of the last 70 years, the Byzantine Empire had become a small part of an ever-expanding Turkish world. After the military defeats of the 1420s, more Romans now lived outside the control of Constantinople than within. Increasingly, economic transactions in the imperial capital were being carried out in the Ottoman currency, as official Byzantine coinage slowly became obsolete in value. The Turkish language had infiltrated daily Roman life, as many Roman citizens could now speak it fluently when making transactions with Turkish merchants. When 15th century Byzantine philosopher and theologian Gennadios Scholarios sought to clear himself from the charge of being pro-Catholic because he knew Latin, he responded that, by this logic, all of us are Muslims, for almost all of us use their language. Through the means of cultural and economic influences, it seemed to many that the Turkish world would swallow the remains of the Roman world in a few generations. However, even at this late date in their decline, the Byzantines looked for ways to unshackle themselves from the clutches of the Ottomans. Although expanding at the expense of Edirne was not an option anymore, expansion in Morea against the various Latin powers of the region would prove to be a vital source of much-needed tax income for the central state. The Latin fortress towns of Klamutsi and Patras were seized by the emperor's younger brother, despot Constantine, in 1427 and 1429, while the latter and his younger brother, despot Thomas, thoroughly conquered the Principality of Achaia in 1432 and even made...
He just said Despot Thomas? Was that part of his name, or he was just desperate, so they said Despot Thomas?
...made diplomatic strides to bring the Duchy of Athens to heel. Even in spite of these surprising military victories against the Latins, a unified plan for Roman revival was non-existent, as Constantine and Thomas often skirmished against their older brother Theodore over control over Morea, as all three men became despot over the same region. Whatever the political situation in Morea, John VIII's great project during the 1430s was a push for union with Rome, in an attempt to gain much-needed military assistance against the Ottomans. Various emperors over the last 2 centuries, notably Michael VIII, John V, and Manuel II, had made significant overtures to the Pope regarding the matter, but all had failed to achieve any meaningful results.
Really?
In spite of past failures, John was determined to get any military or fiscal help from the West. In November 1437, the Byzantine Emperor, his ecumenical patriarch, and hundreds of Byzantine officials sailed off to Italy to begin talks with the papacy to mend the almost 400-year-old Great Schism. The following Council of Ferrara-Florence lasted almost 2 years and saw tense debates between...
One second there, Millie is meowing a lot there, to check out what's going on. Sometimes it's hard to know what she exactly wants. Like right now, I don't know why she's meowing. I gave her snacks, I gave her food. Nothing. That doesn't work, so...
Catholic
and at the moment
Orthodox
I can't play with
clergy
her.
Regarding church doctrines, such as the topic of the use of leavened or unleavened bread during communion, Latin doctrine of purgatory, the controversy surrounding the term filioque, and papal supremacy over the Eastern churches. After some significant theological compromises, and John VIII's acceptance of the supremacy of Rome, the union between the 2 Christian churches was re-established in 1439, to much celebration in Florence.
Okay.
However, like with previous attempts to appeal to the Pope, the popular reaction to the council in Constantinople was primarily adverse. Many in the Byzantine capital still saw the Catholic Church as a foreign tyrannical power and continued on with the local Orthodox practices of their ancestors, seeing the whole event as a papal coup rather than a true union between the 2 churches. John's gamble of unifying the Eastern and Western churches had backfired. Rather than unifying Christendom, it instead resulted in a significant schism in the Eastern Orthodox Church. The Patriarchs of Alexandria, Antioch, Jerusalem, and even the Russian Orthodox Church disowned the union. Worse yet, the younger brother of the emperor, despot Demetrios of Mesembria, rebelled against Constantinople and championed himself as an anti-unionist leader with Ottoman backing. Even though the rebelling despot was defeated in 1442, much of Roman society had soured against the imperial palace, but only time would tell if the council was to bring real military or fiscal results for the Emperor of the Romans against Murad II's war machine. In the next episode of our series on the early history of the Ottomans, we will look at the results for Byzantium as the Ottomans would be confronted with yet another Crusader army at their gates, this time converging at Varna. To ensure you don't miss that, make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Recently, we have started releasing weekly Patreon and YouTube member exclusive content. Consider joining their ranks via the link in the description or button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule.
Okay, we're gonna finish here. And I don't have that much to add. It's just basically, it's kind of like a trailer to see what's gonna happen next. And just like, I'll just like the details in this video. This happened here, this happened there. The other ones were more kind of like, I don't know. This one just felt different to me. So, yeah. I can't really add much. It's kind of interesting that they went there to Florence to talk about the schism that happened, what, 300 years prior? And then obviously there was a schism within this as well, because not everyone was agreeing with it, but he just agreed with it because he wanted to, well, like, keep the power in Constantinople. So that's pretty much all I kind of got from here. That was, yeah, so what you think? Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I see you tomorrow. Bye!